So here we have it, the man of the hour. He pitched in the major leagues for 22 years as a starting pitcher. He's a two-time Cy Young Award, a 10-time All-Star, a World Series MVP, and there's a reason why chicks dig the long ball. He is also a four-time Silver Slugger Award winner. Please welcome Baseball Hall of Famer Tom Glavine in the house. How are you, baby?
I'm great. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
First of all, it's an honor having you. You know, Tom, when I was a little kid, check this out. Back in the days we had VCRs, right? Remember those days, right? And I would
Yep.
imagine facing you, and then I'll be like, oh no, that's a ball. I wouldn't swing, and then the umpire will call it a strike. So, Tom, be honest. How did you earn 2 to 3 inches outside? Because I did my research and I asked former big league hitters about you. They said 2 inches, try like 5 to 6. I'm like, nah, come on now.
Well, let me tell you, if I had 5 to 6, I would have won more than 305 games. I probably would have had a few no hitters under my belt. So listen, I mean, I think that's one of those things that the exaggerations have grown over the years. Um, I don't know how I did it. I just know that when I was a young pitcher, and I was facing guys like Oral Hershiser and Doc Gooden and Fernando Valenzuela, I would pitch and I would notice that, my strike zone wasn't the same as their strike zone was. And, I remember a veteran player or two telling me at the time that, listen, you haven't earned that. You have to go out there and you have to earn that. You have to show that you can throw strikes. You have to show that you can throw the ball where you want to. And then, maybe somewhere down the road, you'll start to get the benefit of some of those borderline calls. And it was true. I didn't get those calls when I was a young pitcher, and maybe I expected to, but it was probably naive. Um, but as time went on, after my first year in the big leagues, I realized one thing: I needed to throw more strikes. So I worked on doing that, and as time went on, I obviously got better and better at it. To the point where, yeah, I knew how to throw the ball on the corner for a strike, and I knew how to throw the ball just off the corner for a ball. And you can bet I was going to try and bring an umpire along with me. That's what pitching is, right? You try to expand the strike zone. So, if you throw the ball where you want to, my philosophy was always I'm gonna try to throw the ball where I want to enough times so that when I throw it where I want to and it's a little bit off the plate, I'm gonna make it hard for that umpire to not call that pitch. It's no different. My command of the strike zone as a pitcher was no different than Tony Gwynn's command of the strike zone as a hitter. Tony Gwynn was a great hitter. He had the reputation of being a great hitter. If there was a pitch that was borderline against Tony Gwynn, it was a ball because he had earned that. And I tried to do the same type of thing as a pitcher. I wanted to try and get to the point where I threw the ball where I wanted to enough that when I asked my catcher to say, hey, set up a couple inches off the plate, and I'm going to try to throw it there, and I'm going to try to get the hitter to chase it. And if the hitter didn't chase it, then fine. If I got the benefit of the call, even better. But I mean, I think that was the essence of what I tried to do, and I can promise you, it was not 6 inches outside. But I'll also tell you this: when I first got in the big leagues, the strike zone was east and west, and you threw a pitch belt high, it was a ball. So we learned to pitch east and west, and I can go back and I can find plenty of videos of me pitching where I throw a fastball on the inner third of the plate to a right-handed hitter, and it's called a ball.
Mm.
Conversely, yeah, I might get that same pitch off the plate, and that was fine. That was fine with me. I learned how to pitch with that.
So, were there any umpires out there that would say, no, Tom, a strike's a strike, a ball's a ball? This is my zone. Was it like that or no?
I mean, I think there were umpires that were, they had reputations, right? I think that's part of what I miss about watching today's game is with the strike zone and the way they've tried to make it a uniform strike zone. There's no personality or not as much personality, so to speak, anymore. In my day, there were guys that were considered hitters umpires. There were guys that were considered pitchers umpires, and who they were. There were guys that you knew you might get the benefit of a call for strike one or strike two, but strike three better be on the plate. And you knew who those guys were, and you learned how to work with those guys. And again, I think that was part of the fun back in those days. The cat and mouse game, so to speak, of knowing what an umpire's reputation was, and then trying to work within that reputation. And try and the mound with that particular guy.
So when you got drafted, this is what I noticed. Your senior year in high school, you scored 47 goals, 47 assists. Overall Major League Baseball draft, you were number 47. So I'm going to ask you a simple question. Is that the reason why you wore number 47, your jersey number?
No, it's funny. People have asked me that, and I really was not aware of being the 47th pick in the draft until recently. But no, I was not a choice in any way, shape, or form. I showed up to my first big league spring training, and that was the number that was hanging in my locker. And I was thankful, to be honest with you, that it wasn't 74, because at least with 47, I thought, well, I might have an outside shot at making the team. When you show up and you've got an offensive or defensive lineman's number, you don't have much chance of making the team. So I was just happy it wasn't one of those numbers. And once I ultimately got to the big leagues, that was the number that changing it.
When you got called up, where were you? Were you double A, triple A?
I I was in AAA. I was in Toledo, Ohio, and it was funny because it was very unexpected. I was pitching really well in AAA at the time, and I think I had won four in a row, five in a row, something like that. And I think when you're a minor leaguer, you don't really understand the evaluation process, right? You think everything's as a pitcher, you got to win every game. You don't realize that your team is evaluating you on much more than wins and losses. They're trying to see progress. They're trying to see consistency. They're trying to see all those things. And if you win, great. So it just so happened, like I said, I've been pitching really well, but this night that I pitched, I lost. I lost 1-0. So going back to the hotel room after a loss, naturally, that's the last thing that was on my mind, that I was going to get called up after I lost. But sure enough, I got back to the hotel room. My manager called and said the Braves, made a trade for Doyle Alexander, and I was going to the big leagues. So it was, very unexpected, I think, at the moment.
We were talking about when you made it, when you got the call up, it was in the Astrodome.
Yeah, my first start was in Houston in the Astrodome. Yeah.
And who was the first hitter you faced?
I want to say it was Billy Hatcher.
Okay.
He was, I think he was center fielder for the Astros. But yeah, I mean, look, again, you talk about the being naive. I thought when the Braves traded Doyle Alexander and I got called up and we're going into Houston, I'm thinking, oh, we're only like 8 or 10 games out. We still have a chance. I'm not having any idea that, trading Doyle Alexander at that stage of the game meant the Braves were pretty much waving the white flag and they were, moving on to try and get better. So it was an experience. I tell you, I've never, obviously, you play minor league ball, you don't ever play in a stadium like that, right? It's one thing to go into some of the stadiums and you see how big they are and how many people are there, but then you have all that with a roof on it and it's loud and it's crazy and it's not like anything you've ever seen. I mean, it was it was a big adjustment, so to speak, and it didn't go well, but it was, again, dream come true, right? Fulfilled a dream. I was in the
Oh my
big leagues,
God.
like, oh my God, how did I get here?
Yeah. You said Doyle Alexander. Wasn't that the trade for Smoltz?
Yeah, that's Smoltz and I are forever linked that way. Yeah, that was the trade that we brought Smoltz over, and then the two of us and Greg played together for so long. So it's pretty crazy how that's all intertwined.
Yeah. Oh my God. The fact that John Smoltz was the guy, and then what the crazy thing is, in your draft class, Maddux was in the same draft class as you, and he was the 31st pick.
Yeah, he was a little bit ahead of me. I think, and if memory serves me, going back over that draft, there were some pretty good players in that draft. So I think that's the beauty of baseball, right? It's in so many other sports, it's the first round guys, and then you kind of take a flyer on everybody else. But in baseball, you don't know where guys are going to come from, and guy like Mike Piazza that was not even drafted as a Hall of Famer. So it's
Right.
crazy.
You know what's crazy is that the fact that you were also an outstanding hockey player, and I'm imagining this. Imagine if you did sign with the Kings. Wayne Gretzky could have been your teammate, man. Imagine that.
Yeah, that was my line back in the day, and I don't think at that point, I don't think people kind of understood my sarcasm a little bit. Because that when that trade happened, I remembered people coming to me and asking me about it. And I said, my standard reply was, well, either Wayne would have been the second best center on the team or he would have had to move to the left wing. So, and I think people kind of thought I was serious, but, no, I mean, look, hockey was a huge background for me. And I think a lot of what I was as a hockey player came through on the mound. Um, and truth be told, I tell people all the time I was a better hockey player coming out of high school than I was a baseball player, particularly a pitcher. I mean, um, I was way more polished, understood the game way more. Pitching, I just I had a good arm. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I just had a good arm. Um, so I always wonder what would have happened. I don't regret the choice, obviously, because I can't imagine it would have worked out any better than baseball did. But it's hard not to wonder what would happen.
Wow. So when you were in high school, you were you like the man? Like when people say, "Oh man, this guy's special." This kid out of high school.
To some degree. I mean, you know, um, it's funny because I look back and I look at I didn't even get voted most athletic in my high school class. So what does that tell you, right? But
Oh wait a minute.
there was another guy that was a great athlete. I think he played three sports, so maybe that's why he won out. But
Was it
I don't know.
Gary?
Look, I
Was it your
no,
teammate
it wasn't
Gary?
Gary. No, it was another guy. But look, I mean, I always knew I was a good player, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard not to. Now, it's one thing to know you are, and it's another thing to act like you are, right? And thank God for my parents. They never let me act that way. It's just go about your business, do your thing, and let's see what happens. But it's hard not to notice at some point in time, right? Because I'd go to my high school hockey games, and I'd see all kinds of college scouts or college coaches. I'd see all kinds of NHL scouts at my games. When I was pitching my junior year in high school, there'd be 30 radar guns behind home plate. So, I mean, it's, you can't help but notice that kind of stuff. But again, I think for me, I, I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I was just, I guess, kind of curious where it was going, right? I mean, I knew obviously that I was not going to get an opportunity to play at the next level, which I don't necessarily love that statement, but I knew I was going to get to play at college. I was going to get a chance to play in college. I knew there was a chance I was going to get drafted. I didn't really know what that meant, um, because I mean, I had a college scholarship to go play hockey and baseball, and that was a big deal. For my dad to have a college paid for, that was a huge deal. So I mean, that for the longest time was the road that I was going. I was going to school, and even when I got drafted in hockey, I knew the Kings weren't going to make a push to sign me. That's not how hockey works. So I guess the wild card was baseball, and I didn't know how high I was going to get drafted in baseball. I just knew I was probably going to get drafted. Um, and then the Braves obviously were super aggressive in getting me signed, but I just it's like I tell people all the time. I got drafted in hockey. A week or so later, I get drafted in baseball. And as an 18-year-old kid, you talk about, 10-day or 2-week period where you really get to dig yourself a little bit. It was a pretty good 2-week period for me, but then I had to figure out, all right, what am I going to do? And then it got stressful because then it was like, all right, am I going to school? Am I going to sign? What am I doing? So it got a little bit stressful, but it worked out all right.
But I feel like in your home, education is really big, right? Like,
It was. Look, I mean, that was first and foremost, right? And it's funny. You always, as a kid, you always say, "I'm not going to become my parents when I get older." Guess what? Yes, you do. A lot of the ways you parent are things that your parents did to you, and now you tweak some things along the way. But no, I mean, I was the same way with my kids, education first and foremost. And if, you don't hold up your end of the bargain in the classroom, then you can bet your bottom dollar you're not going to play sports, or you're going to miss practice, or you're going to miss a game, or whatever punishment is necessary for, crappy grades. So, that was the way my parents were. I knew that school came first. If I didn't do well in school, then I wasn't playing. So, I didn't need much more motivation than that. Um, I thank them for that, because it certainly has served me well throughout my lifetime. It's like I jokingly always tell my kids, right? I'm like, listen, it's never going to hurt you to not be stupid. So work hard in school, be smart, be educated, be able to defend your positions and talk about your things that you need to talk about. But that all comes from discipline in the classroom, and that was first and foremost with my parents.
Tom, how do you get over a bad outing? For instance, your first year, right? Your first full year, 88, 7 wins, 17 losses, right? In your mind, are you thinking when you had those bad outings, oh my God, I might be getting the ticket. I might be going to AAA, or, do you have thoughts like that or no?
Oh no, absolutely. It's hard not to. I'll say it was twofold. Number one, I had a tremendous support group with my parents, and my brothers and sisters. They were my support group. That because back then, we were on TBS, so my parents got to watch me pitch, which was great. And I would generally talk to my parents after every time I pitched. That was kind of our routine. And my parents were really good at keeping me positive. My dad was a hell of an athlete, so he had that background, so we could have those conversations. My mom was a little bit more of the cheerleader, like everything's okay, the sky's not falling, that kind of stuff. So that was really helpful. But look at it, it's hard not to go through periods where you think, oh my God, I'm going to get sent down, and what have you. And I remember at the time, Russ Nixon was our manager. He had taken over for Chuck Tanner. We were in Chicago playing the Cubs. Called me in his office and he said, "Listen, stop worrying about going back to the minor leagues. You're getting the ball every fifth day. Go figure it out." And that was really helpful for me, because I think you tend to evaluate yourself always on results, winning and losing. If I win, then I must have pitched good. If I lost, then I must not have. And that's not the case. And I think that was a really valuable lesson for me those early years, um, as my career progressed, as to how I evaluated what I was doing. Because listen, you can go out there and be lucky as hell and win a ball game, and then you can go out there and pitch really well and lose. And that's not really what it's about. I mean, obviously the results matter, but that there's more to what you did than the results, right? So I think that really taught me how to evaluate myself honestly and what I was doing, and put results aside, and really at every stage of my career sit down after a game or after a stretch of games and really, like, okay, are you executing pitches? Are you doing most of what you want to do, even though the results may not be you want, or even if they are and you're not executing the way you want to. So I mean, I think that really helped me moving on in my career. um, but it was, and again, in those days, I thought that's exactly how they were evaluating me, was whether I was winning or losing, and I couldn't have been more wrong. They clearly wanted to see development out of me, and I think I did that. My second half of that year was a lot better. My ERA was way better. I may not have been winning any more games, but my ability to go out there and pitch better and give the team a chance to win was getting more and more consistent. Um, but at some point in time, I did. I truthfully settled on, you know what, I'm losing. However many games I'm losing, these guys must see something good in me if they keep sending me out there to do this. So, it needed to be, I guess, a case where I started to believe in myself a little bit, which again I did. And I think, like we talked about early on, I think that was my biggest takeaway that year was, when I was on my game and I threw a lot of strikes, I pitched well. When I didn't, I didn't. And that was the whole thing I worked on that winter when I went home, was fastball command. It was fastball, fastball, fastball. If I can throw my fastball for strikes, then I got a chance. And I came back that next year and had a really good year, my second year.
So when did it all click, Tom? Was it Leo Mazzoni involved in this? When did it all click and say, was it the arm release, the spin of the ball? When did you finally realize and say, "Aha, now I get
Um,
it"?
it was a culmination of things, but I will say the icing on the cake was my changeup. When Leo came on board, kind of similar to what I figured out on my own after my first full year in the big leagues is fastball command is the key. That's where it all starts. If you can throw your fastball for strikes, it's going to make your secondary pitches better, and it's going to make a hitter respect you. No hitter wants to get beat on a fastball, especially an 88-mile-an-hour fastball. So, fastball command is where it has to start. And Leo really emphasized that command of that down and away fastball. So that was obviously a part of the philosophy. Then it became, when Leo came up, he made us throw more in between starts, which when he first suggested that to me, I said, "You're crazy. My arm already hurts and you want me to throw more." And he was like, "Just trust me, trust me. You're going to feel better. You're going to get better." And I credit him for that because I did feel better, but that's really where I learned my mechanics by getting on the mound twice in between starts and throwing more, but throwing with less effort and still being able to make the ball spin the way I wanted it to with less effort. It made it so much easier when I got out into a game, and now it's max effort or close to max effort. Well, now I can really make the ball do what I want to do at that level. So that's where I learned what he likes to call feel and touch. You're making the ball do what you want it to do at a lower percentage of effort, and learn how to do that. So when you get on the mound, it becomes easier in a game. So I learned how to repeat my mechanics, which allowed me to make adjustments from hitter to hitter, inning to inning. Like I always say that when I talk to kids, it's like, listen, you need to become your own best coach. Understand what you're doing, understand what your mechanics are, have one or two checkpoints if things aren't going right. Because if you're waiting for your pitching coach to come out and tell you what you're doing wrong, you're generally in a really bad place. So let's try to avoid getting in that bad place. Right now, doesn't happen all the time. I mean, even for us at that level, there are times where, either I know what I'm doing and I can't fix it, or I can't quite feel it. And I was always a feel guy. If you can tell me all day long what I'm doing, if I can't feel it, it's hard for me to fix it. So that was just the way I operated. But through all of that, it still was, when I was good, I was good. When I wasn't, I wasn't. I didn't really know how to win a game when I had my B stuff or even my C stuff. And when I really got my changeup going, that was the thing that really put me over the top, because that was a pitch that allowed me, when I didn't have good fastball command or I didn't have good breaking ball command, that was the pitch that always helped me to stay in the game. It always gave me that go-to, and even at times where I may didn't have as good a changeup as I would like to on a given night, I would still have the other stuff. So I think all those things combined, but ultimately, like I said, the icing on the cake was the changeup, because that was the pitch that really separated me when I was good. But it was the pitch that really allowed me to win games when I wasn't at my best. And I didn't really know how to do that as a young pitcher.
So when you were throwing that changeup, from a hitter's point of view, look, I've been watching some your vicious changeups, and I'm a lefty too, and I'm like, that is hard to hit. That is really hard to hit. When it's not working well, Tom, is it a mechanical issue, or is just it's not happening? It's just you're leaving the ball up in the zone?
I would say it's a little bit of both. It's but generally speaking, I would say it's a mechanical thing. But it's okay. What's causing the mechanical thing, right? Am I doing something wrong with my delivery, or is it a confidence thing? And a lot of times, confidence leads to bad mechanics. I know for me, there were times where if I didn't feel good on the mound and I didn't feel right, like I was searching for something, I knew I was off a little bit. What's your tendency? Well, you start trying to guide the ball a little bit. You start trying to make pitches not to make mistakes instead of trying to make pitches to get guys out. And when you start pitching that way, you start pitching defensively. And ultimately, is that a mechanical thing? Yeah, because instead of being down through the ball and getting good downward release, you're a little off to the side. You're kind of pushing it, trying to help it. But that, like I said, sometimes is a confidence thing where you're just like, man, something doesn't feel right. All right, don't make a mistake here. Kind of, instead of here you go, here it comes, try to hit it. So they kind of go hand in hand. But I would say, more times than not, it's probably a little bit of a mechanical thing where either my tempo's off a touch, which either makes you speed up or slow down, or my two checkpoints were my tempo and my leg and my turn. Sometimes I'd get short with my turn, and my reminder was always I wanted to show, being a lefty, I wanted to show my back right pocket to the hitter. If he saw my back pocket, then I was making a good turn, and then everything kind of flowed from there. If I cut it short, then everything had to hurry up, and chances are I wasn't going to get to the spot that I wanted to get to. But again, those are things that I just learned over time and getting on the mound more often and kind of feeling that stuff and figuring that stuff out.
Tom, when you say the back, you want to show what you say earlier? Show the
My
what?
back pocket, my back right pocket.
Okay, so your back right pocket. So that means you want to stay longer in the throwing zone, right? You don't want to open up too soon with the shoulder. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I think that for me, again, that front side, let's say I'm trying to throw a sinker away to a righty or a changeup away to a righty. That front side goes too soon. Now your arm's down a little bit. Now that ball has more of an east and west break to it, which a hitter can hit versus that north and south break and that little finish. Then instead of the hitter getting it on the barrel of the bat, he's getting it on the end of the bat and hitting the ground ball, right? That east and west movement, unless it's like a cutter, a Mariano cutter, that east and west movement is typically that's a movement a hitter can track. That north and south is a little bit harder for a hitter to track. So that's what I wanted to see, and so that was kind of one of my checkpoints on my stuff away to a righty. It was something I really had to learn when I was started to pitch in more. Is going into a right-handed hitter, I really had to keep that front side under control, because if my tendency was I tried to throw it inside too hard, my front side would fly, ball leaks over the plate, ball goes a long way. Once I learned how to keep that front side quiet and trust myself to get in there, I became much more effective in there. And again, in conversations with Leo, that was, you never know what's going to click or what makes sense to you. Right. And I can talk all day long about, all right, keep that front side quiet, but I didn't want to think about mechanics. I kind of wanted to react. Something he said to me that really clicked for me and helped me was, all right, you're going in on a righty, you're sneaking the ball in there. You're not overpowering the ball in there. And that terminology helped me. It's like, okay, because that's kind of the way I did it. When I pitched inside to righties, most of the time, particularly early in my career, I was getting to a 2-strike count, and I knew I had one shot at trying to lock a guy up on a fastball in. And, so in essence, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to sneak it in there. I was trying to trick him a little bit. And I knew I was going to get one shot. So if I hit it, yeah, you got strike 3. If I miss, all right, now I got to go back and make another good pitch on the other side of the plate. So I think once I learned kind of to slow it down and sneak that ball in there, that helped me to keep my front side under control without thinking mechanically, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I get it. And you're saying keep that front side. It's the same thing as a hitter. You got to keep that shoulder in, especially when you face a left-handed pitcher. And you're a left-handed hitter, so you know what it's like. Now, as a pitcher, your schedule, let's say you started Monday, you had a great game that Monday night. Talk to me about preparing for the next start. What do you do the next day, Tuesday?
Tuesday, it kind of varied throughout my career. Early in my career, Tuesday was kind of the day after was my heavy lift day. And by heavy, I mean an in-season heavy. It's not like I'm throwing weights around the weight room, right? But
Oh,
it
so
was
you were
more,
lifting. You were lifting back
yeah.
then.
Well, I'm saying, you know what? I say that in the 90s. Early in my career, it's funny. We used to joke that, you'd spend all winter getting in shape so you can go to spring training and get out of shape, because it was like you don't
Right.
lift weights during the season. I remember when I got called up to the big leagues, they showed me around the locker room and they showed me where the weight room, and it's like, okay, here's the weight room. Now stay out of there. And that's the way it was in the late 80s.
Oh,
In
wow.
the 90s, it started to be where we actually worked out during the season and tried to maintain some strength and do those things. Um,
All right. So
so yeah,
Tuesday you were doing weights.
so the day after would be a lift, and then I'd play a little bit of catch, just see
Yeah.
how I felt. Second day was I would do like a flush run, a long distance run, and I'd throw a bullpen, throw out of the windup the
And
first day.
and how many pitches you throw in the bullpen that Wednesday?
Um, I would say once I started throwing it twice in between starts, I would say it would be 25 to 30, maybe.
Okay.
Uh, and that's hard. It's hard to learn that, right? Because we all grew up on you throw once in between starts and you throw, 60 or 70 pitches and you're throwing at 80% effort level. And it's like there's no recovery when you do that. And you just didn't realize it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I learned, like I said, you little bit less effort level, little, and that's the key to being able to throw twice in between starts is you have to be able to recognize when it's time to walk away, you know, because for me, it was always when I throw my side sessions, it's fastball and changeup, command, but mostly spin. If the spin is there, fine. If the command is there, great. I'd like to have both, but if I've got spin, then that's fine. Sprinkle in a couple of breaking balls, same thing. I'm looking for spin, I'm not looking for command, and then walk away. As long as my fastball and changeup were good, I didn't care about my breaking ball. That's fine, you know. But if you go over there with the mindset of if you have three pitches or you have four pitches, and every time you get on the mound, you're going to have all three or all four working perfectly, you're going to be there all day and you're going to get hurt. So I think that was the key is you had to know, I had to know all right, what's my bread and butter, fastball, changeup. If those two are good and my breaking ball spin is good, great, get out of here. Now, there was an occasional time where, for instance, if I'm facing a Barry Bonds or a Tony Gwynn, I might spend a little bit more time working on my curveball or my slider because I knew I was going to need it against those guys. But, those were adjustments you made. But, you had to be careful doing that. So then the third day was kind of
That's the Thursday now. Go ahead.
so now we go to the third day. My third day was kind of a lighter version of my heavy workout. So just, lighter weights, more reps. And then I would do some kind of cardio interval kind of thing, get my heart going a little bit. And then I'd throw another bullpen. I'd throw out of the stretch on the second day. And then the day before was just go outside, play catch, see how you feel, and just kind of take it easy and then pitch. So that was, now as time went on, I would reverse those things a little bit. I would run the day after I pitched as I got older to try and get some of the stiffness out of my body and feel better. But then, there are times too where you got to pay attention to your body. If something hurts, then you might have to back off on a lift, or you might have to back off on a run, or you might have to do something. But my the thing that I tried to never back off on was my bullpens. If I had to back off on a workout, or I had to back off running. Okay, so that's fine, so be it. But I tried like hell not to back off on bullpens.
And then the day before your start, you have to chart what the hitters are doing, the opposing. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what we did in those days. Yeah, we had to actually keep score and keep the pitching chart. We didn't have all the analytics and digital stuff that they do
Right.
today. It's not to say we didn't have analytics. We had plenty of information. We just didn't call it analytics. But yeah, so you would do the pitching chart the day before, which was, kind of a relaxation kind of thing, kind of like, slow your brain down a little bit. You're pitching tomorrow, you're going to take it easy. So, for me, it all depended on, who was pitching the day before me. If Maddux or Avery was pitching the day before me and I was facing the same team, I'm going to pay attention a little bit more. If Smoltz pitching, it really doesn't help me much because I don't have his stuff, so he's not going to pitch. He's not going to pitch stuff. He's not going to pitch guys the way I would pitch them. Even with Greg, I mean, Greg and I obviously, Greg had, more of the cutter and all that stuff. But for me, when I would watch Greg pitch the day before I pitched, it was all location. I want to see hitters' reaction to where he throws the ball in or out and see what information I can gain from that, But yeah, it wasn't like we were sitting there, just glued on the TV with every pitch. I mean, we were probably sitting there eating something during the game, whatever. We had kind of convinced Bobby that, when we're doing the chart, it's better to do it up in the clubhouse. We can see the pitches on TV more. So it was really a relaxation day. But, again, in those days, you always had your spikes nearby because you never knew when we were going to run out of players and somebody had to pinch hit.
Well, and speaking of pinch hitting, that's you, right? You were the first guy.
I had a few of them. I mean, Smoltz had a few too, but yeah, I mean, you always had to be ready. That's part of the game I think I missed today with the DH is, those days where you run out of position players and you got to send a pitcher up there.
But okay, so Tom, now those 4 days, you did not mention when do you put the hitting. When is hitting
Oh,
involved?
well, yeah. I mean, you're right, but we did. We hit just about every day.
Oh, okay.
Back in those days, Jimmy Williams, Ned Yost, those guys were our third base coaches from, off and on, whatever. We would hit all the time, and it was great because Bobby knew the value of us being able to at least swing the bat and not be an automatic out.
Mhm.
So it got to the point where the starting pitchers had their own hitting group, and it would always be early before BP started. We would have our first group, and then the regulars would come out and they'd take BP. So we were always swinging the bat, but then Jimmy Williams or Ned would always take us down in the tunnel into the batting cage once or twice in between starts, like after batting practice, before the game's going to start, that time in between. All right, come on, he'd take two starting pitchers, and would get on. We'd work on our bunts, would work on our hit and runs, would take some swings, and we'd be done. But that was it was important to all of us to be able to handle the bat a little bit, but equally it was important to those coaches that we were good at it. I have to give them a ton of credit for giving us the time. It's not, those guys throw so much batting practice. It's easy to say, pitchers, I can't throw on my arm or whatever, but they never did that. They always threw to us.
And when it comes to hitting, did they teach you let the ball get deep, or they want you to hit it out in front, whether it's outside or inside? I mean, inside you're always going to hit out in front, but
There were times where we would talk about it, but I think for the most part, we just tried to be athletic and put the ball in play. I mean, I guess, obviously it's one of those things that the more you do it, the more you understand, well, geez, if I get to a ball out here, it's going to go here. If I let it travel, it's going to go there. So I think we understood a little bit of that enough that, if Bobby was feeling a little bit froggy and he put on a hit and run with one of us, we kind of knew where you needed to try to hit the ball or get to the ball to hit a certain hole if you thought, the shortstop was covering. But I just think, again, we more than anything else, we just didn't want to be an automatic out, right? We wanted to at least make that guy on the mound have to execute a couple pitches,
Mhm.
make it a little bit difficult on him. But, listen, our primary job was to get a bunt down, first and
Right.
foremost. And to me, that was kind of my mindset. There was never an excuse not to be able to do that, right? I mean, I always felt like, listen, I'm going to do enough things on the mound as a pitcher to make Bobby want to take me out of the game.
Mhm.
I'm damn sure not letting him take me out of the game in the seventh inning of a tie game because I can't get down a bunt.
Right.
And, it's one of those things that over time, you don't really think about it, but over time, when you start to look at it, I can't tell you how many games I was able to win because I stayed in late because Bobby kept me in there to bunt, and then all of a sudden, maybe you get a run that inning or you get a run an inning later, you're still in the game. You get that win versus, well, you got pinch hit for 2 innings later, we score. Yeah, you got a no decision. I mean, difference between 13 and 15 wins in a year or 17 or 20 wins in a year, it's a big difference.
Yeah, but also you guys, when you started the game, most of the time you finished the game too, at least
Well, we
70%.
got deep anyway. I mean, look, I think the game evolved obviously during our years. I think that during our years was really where kind of the setup man started to come into play. Everybody had their closers, but the setup man became more of a role. And then the seventh inning guy became more of a role. And I think for us, look, we tried to go as deep as we could, right? And compared to today's game where guys don't pitch complete games anymore and they don't pitch into the seventh inning anymore, it seems like we went way deep into games. But again, generationally, you ask Nolan Ryan or Ferguson Jenkins, our generation was soft. Those guys are throwing 350 innings a year. They were completing 25 games a year. So it's all generational to some extent. But I think in our mind it was, we felt good about obviously handing the ball over to the bullpen to get 3 outs. We felt really good about 6 outs. When you start talking about 9 outs, so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where we tried to draw the line as best we could was, man, if we could keep it to 6 outs for the bullpen, we've done a really good job.
Yeah. Tom, so 1990, when you came up, 88, 89, 90, last place, right? And all of a sudden, 91, it was just a switch. When you came up, the attendance in Atlanta County, Fulton, what is it? Atlanta County,
Fulton County Stadium.
Fulton
Yeah.
County Stadium. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fulton County Stadium. What was it, like 5,000 fans that would come in? I think, was there more in AAA than the big leagues? The fans.
Sometimes, right? No, I know back in those days, we were on TBS and you're playing at Fulton County Stadium, and it's the typical multi-purpose stadium with the lower bowl. And I remember early in the game, the ushers would always have the people that were in the stadium come down and sit in the lower bowl, kind of between third base and first base, so that it didn't look so empty on TV. Like Ted Turner would be like, "Listen, get some people down there. It looks empty on TV. We can't have that." So they would move people down in that lower bowl behind home plate, so it looked like we had a decent crowd. But we didn't. There was no reason to come watch us back then, other than Dale Murphy. I mean, that's what people came to see, was Dale Murphy. And look, it was. I'm not going to say that any of us saw 91 coming in 91, but we saw it coming. I think it was just probably at least a year, maybe two earlier than we anticipated. Because again, similar to, my first year in the big leagues where I lost 17 games, the second half of the year, I did much better. 1990 was kind of that way for us as a team. Bobby took over, Leo took over. The second half of the year, we were a decent team. And you could kind of starting to see the pieces of the puzzle. You had me, Smoltz, Avery, you had David Justice, Ronnie Gant. We had Lemke, Blauser, a lot of the core of the younger minor league guys that would all play together that were kind of our prospects. We were all in the big leagues. So you could kind of see the nucleus of a good team there. Now, again, I think we went into that winter, and you get Terry Pendleton, you get Rafael Belliard, you get Sid Bream. We got some guys in the bullpen, but I think we went into spring training that year thinking, yeah, we're going to be competitive, and when you're coming off a 100-win season, competitive is a relative thing, right? We thought, well, we could get around 500. We could maybe finish second or third in our division, cause some people some problems. Nobody in their right mind thought we were going to win that division. But, then again, that spring you get Otis Nixon, and now he's playing center field for us. And, Dion is there. And it's just, I think more than the biggest change for us that year, and I know for me, and I'm sure if you would have asked Smoltz, he'd tell you the same thing. The biggest thing was we now trusted those guys behind us playing defense. And it was like, okay, because you hear it all the time, right? Throw strikes, make them put the ball in play, let your defense work for you. Okay, well, that sounds really easy. And then when you do see that happening and guys behind you aren't making plays, well, it's kind of hard to buy in, right? But now all of a sudden you see, Pendleton's making plays, Belliard's making plays, Sid Bream's gobbling everything up at first base, and Otis Nixon's running everything down in the outfield. It's like, oh, okay. So, I think it, more than anything, it helped all of us pitchers' confidence, because we were like, all right, yeah, let these guys go to work. So, it was way sooner than we thought. And even during that year, we were kind of right there. And then we had a bad week the week before the All-Star break. And I think we went from, one or two back to like 7 or 8 back, maybe even more. And it wasn't like we were dead in the water or anything like that. But, we all remember coming back from the All-Star break, that was Bobby's speech. He's like, guys, we had a good first half. Last week got away from us a little bit, but we're one good week away from getting back in this thing. And I'll be damned, we went out and won 7 or 8 in a row, and the Dodgers lost 7 or 8 in a row. And it's, here we go. From that point on, I think we started to believe it. And then, the rest is history, as we say.
Well, when did the stadium become fuller, as far as like in the mid 91?
I want to say around Memorial Day, because I think around Memorial Day we were in first place for the first time in I don't know how long. I remember one morning getting a call from our PR guy, like in the morning, and it was just to call me and tell me, hey, we're in first place. And I was like, okay. And it's like, no, this is a really big deal. The Braves haven't been in first place since whatever. And it was like, okay, great. And it was exciting. It was cool. And then, you'd start, that's when, when Dion was there and the tomahawk chop started and all that stuff. And, just the groundswell of excitement around Atlanta. You'd be so many times I'd be driving to the ballpark and somebody would see you in your car and they're, going 80 miles an hour down the highway doing the tomahawk chop, and then you got to the ballpark and it was a full house. And then you get into a situation where the momentum's turning your way a little bit and you got 45,000 people doing the chop. I mean, it was, I've had other players tell me that was intimidating. Like it was like, oh, here we go, so
Wow.
it was really cool to see all that take place and kind of the city get enveloped by it and just to be a part of it. It was a ton of fun.
Tom, was there ever billboards of you in Atlanta?
There might have been. I don't remember. I
But like
it
when
was
you're
like
all over magazines, you're
mhm.
everywhere. I mean, you couldn't walk out of your house, could you?
No, I mean, and it was fun. It was fun and it was aggravating from time to time, but
When you say
that.
aggravating, what do you mean by that? Give me an
Well, I
example.
mean, sometimes you're going out and you're just trying to be incognito and get something to eat, and somebody recognizes you, and you got to kind of
You got
you
to
got
be
to put the
nice.
face on, right? You
Right.
got to try and be nice,
But they don't know you might be going through a hard time behind
No, they don't know,
you.
and
Yeah.
you know what? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? It
Right.
doesn't matter to them. I mean, look at. I think we've all been in situations where, you're a little annoyed about something, and you don't treat somebody the way you probably should, and that's a lasting impression for that person. And there are other times where, it's not so bad, but they came away, with a bad taste in their mouth, right? I mean,
Mhm.
so, I mean, I think that was something my dad always used to tell me. It's like, it's just a lot easier to be nice to people and give them an autograph, give them a picture and let them go on their way, rather
Right.
than, because I'd seen it, somebody would come to a table when you're having dinner and it's like, hey, dude, I'm having dinner. Can you leave me alone? And then that starts the conversation. Well, what's the
Right.
big deal? And by the time you go through all that, you could have signed an autograph and sent the guy on his way feeling happy about things, right? So
Mhm.
that was kind of the way I always try to approach it. And I'm not saying I did it all the time, but, like I said, there were times I remember there was one time I was driving home from the ballpark and it was right at the advent of cell phones and my wife called me and she's like, "Hey, we don't have any formula. Our little guy was 2 years old. Can you stop at the grocery store, get some baby formula?" I'm like, "Oh man, yeah, I'm going to just make it. They're closing in 10 minutes." So I run in, get the formula. There's somebody in there that's talking to me and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm trying to get in and get out so I can get home. Well, sure enough, it happened to be a friend of a friend of a friend who I'm playing golf with the next day. And, we're on the first tee and he says to me, "Hey," and he's laughing. He's like, "Why were you rude to my friend last night at the grocery store?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I guess you went to the store last night on your way home and this guy, didn't think you gave him enough time." But I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Oh
you
God.
know, but
Come
I mean,
on now.
that's the stuff you run into, right? You can't, you can't always win, but you can try. But to your point, yeah, I mean, it got to be, it was, look at it was, to go from a scenario where you could essentially walk around town and if somebody did recognize you that you played for the Braves, they didn't care, to now all of a sudden you hung the moon. I mean, as a group, it was a ton of fun, like I said, and to be a part of that and, kind of that whole scenario where the people in the city couldn't do enough for you, couldn't pay you enough accolades, whatever. It was a lot of fun.
But Tom, wherever you went, dinner was on the house. Whatever you wanted,
Ah,
right? Come on now. Let's be.
I don't know about that. Maybe
Dinner
a
was on
drink
the
here or
house.
there,
Oh,
but
Tom, whatever you need, we
yeah.
got you.
I don't
Please.
know about that. Like I said, maybe a beer here and there, but I don't know about it. I don't know about dinner.
All right. So 91, unbelievable year individually, team wise. You guys came short. Man, I was rooting for you guys too, man. And I'm a diehard Yankees fan, but I'm like, come
Eh,
on, man. But Puckett got you guys, and you guys were up 3-2 in that series, right?
yeah, everybody,
Oh,
every home game was a winner. Nah, it was a tough series. I mean, you look
well,
back
I
at it
think
now, and
that decoy with Knobloch and whoever this was the
well, the
shortstop, Lonnie
decoy, and then
Smith
Kent Herbeck's
with the knee,
body
right?
slam. Yeah, I mean, I think that's if we had instant replay, that might have gone differently. But
Mm.
yeah, look, it's just one of those things. I mean, look, they had a storybook year that year too, right? They went from worst to first, and we went from worst to first, and it was going to be a storybook ending for somebody. Unfortunately, it wasn't us, but look, it was a great series, right? I mean, it's
Oh,
still one of those
it
series
was
that
really
you
great.
look back at as one of the best, probably in terms of entertainment value. As a kid, for me, it's that 75 World Series with the Red Sox and the Reds that was unbelievable. And even though it was a bad outcome, it was still one of those series that, like, oh my God, the things that happened. And that series was the same way. It didn't end the right way. But,
All right,
I
so
mean,
now
look,
92, now you're back. I mean, come on.
yeah.
It's so hard to get there. It's so hard because you know how it is in the month of October, man. The team that makes less mistakes are the teams that's going to advance. That's the bottom line. You got a great team doesn't really make great plays. You can see here and there, but that great team eliminates mistakes and they capitalize on the opposing mistakes, right?
No
So,
question.
yeah. But the 92 team, do you think the Blue Jays were better than you guys or no?
No, I just think that, sadly, that series turned on one pitch. Ed Sprague's home run in Game 2 was really where that thing turned around. We were going to go to Toronto up 2-0, and I think that's a different series if that happens. Unfortunately, it didn't. But to your point, that's the way the postseason is, right? And like even now, this year, everybody talks about the Braves. Yeah, well, the Braves are the best team in baseball, no question about it. But playoff baseball is different, and you over the course of 162 games, the best team is going to rise and they're going to win. In a short series, that's not always the case. It's to your point, it's the team that makes less mistakes, makes more clutch plays. I look back at the years that we lost, and then look at in '95 where we won, and inevitably you can look at a play or two that changed everything. That it goes your way, you win. It doesn't go your way, you lose. Like I said, the Ed Sprague home run in Game 2 of that series. We had some other opportunities in that series where, a key hit or a key pitch, and it turns out differently. And that's not always exclusive in a short series to the best team, right? It's just the guy at the moment,
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what makes playoff baseball so scary for the favorites, because you're supposed to win. The target's on your back to win. The other teams are playing with a little bit more carefree kind of, we got nothing to lose kind of thing. And you see it now. Look at this year's postseason, right? Is there a team that limped into the playoffs more than Texas, and now is hotter than Texas?
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, and Arizona's hot too.
Yeah.
And I think these wild card teams, I mean, they have momentum. What's your take on that? Having 5 days off. I don't know, Tom. I'm the type of guy I want to play, man. I can't take those 5 days off, man.
No, and that's the $64,000 question that nobody has the answer for, right? Look, I think every team, every player, everybody's going to tell you, listen, we want to play hard and we want to win and we want to have home field advantage. That's first and foremost, right? And that's important. And what comes with that now, the way it's structured, is some off time. That's always the danger. You don't know how a team is going to react coming out of that downtime, right? It's a benefit. You earned it. I think most teams would probably tell you they'd rather have the off days than not. It's clearly more difficult to have to win more series to win the World Series, right? I mean, there's no disputing that. It's just it's a question of, well, which one is more advantageous or not, right? But again, you look at the Braves. They had the benefit of those off days, whereas they got Max Fried back, right? He gave him time to heal, to get healthy, to be able to pitch. That's the upside, right? If you got guys banged up, you get rest and you can get them hopefully as close to 100% as they can be at that time of the year, and you can take advantage of that. But having said that, yeah, there's something to be said for keeping on playing, right, and keeping that intensity level high. You can't replicate that in inter squad games or live batting practice or until you get out there with consequences, it's different. And that's always going to be something that teams try to figure out. But I like the format right now. I think the only thing I don't like about the format is I think that after that division, that first round, you should reseed, right? I don't think the Braves should be playing the Phillies. They should have been playing in Arizona. I think that baseball needs to do a reseeding like every other sport does after that first round.
Yeah, because
That's
Phillies
the only thing I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I told everybody I picked the Braves in Game 5. It's not going to be easy the first round.
No,
It's
no,
not
Philly's a tough
easy.
matchup for them,
Yeah.
and sometimes again to your point, you try to manage those off days. Sometimes you want that when you've had those off days, you want that first series to be a tough one because now you're kind of battle tested and you're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, but you know what is? It's that first series. Like when you're a division winner, when the expectations are high, you're like, okay, but you're so anxious, you're so like you want it, and all of a sudden, well, you lost the first game now, and you better tie it. And I still feel like you guys have more pressure than the Phillies right now, even though, I mean, you're going to Philly right now, but there's still pressure on the Braves because you gotta win this series to prove that you're the team,
Of course, listen,
right?
it's when you go into like the Braves are the only team in this postseason that it's World Series or bust, right? They're the only team, right? Like if they don't win the World Series, then there are people out there that will tell you that what they did during the regular season doesn't matter,
Right.
regardless of how historic it was. Now, I'm not one of those guys because I understand how difficult it is once you get into the postseason. So, I can separate those two things, but I think the average person does not. So, when you, like I said, when you have that bullseye on your back where you're the team that's expected to win, there's a lot more pressure there. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't care what you do, what walk of life you're in. I don't think you'll find anybody that will tell you that they don't do their job better when they're more relaxed and they're more confident, right?
Yeah.
And when you're the target, it's a little bit harder to be relaxed.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot more pressure. You get a little bit more of the, again, that mentality of, you know, don't go out. You're not going out there to win. You're going out there not to screw it up, right?
Right.
And that's a big difference. So,
Yeah.
every other team's they got nothing to lose. They're just going to play. The Braves, it's like, well, if you don't win, then you blew it, and that's a
Yeah.
tough way to have to play.
Well, the Braves' mentality now as a team, it's like, hey, World Series, that's it. That's our number one target. It's the same thing with the Yankees every year. World Series is now number one target. You know what I mean? You're the team because I remember the Braves. They win the division, but they get eliminated, and it's like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You can't do that in New York, man. You know what I mean?
No, you're
You
right. I
know,
mean, markets are different. And again, I think for us in Atlanta, when we lost in 91 or 92, it wasn't, but then, you lose in 93 and now it's like, oh, what's going on? So, I mean, if you have enough chances and come short, then inevitably you're going to start to have some of that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, big market teams, Yankees in particular, when you have history and you have payroll,
right?
again, people always seem to equate payroll with winning and losing, and I think in baseball more than any other sport, it's just not that way. I
Yeah,
mean, it
yeah.
helps. It helps to be able to pay players, but
It
um,
helps, but if the superstar's not performing in October,
right,
it's like,
yeah,
whoa, come on
absolutely,
now. You
yeah,
know?
yep.
Tom, this is a personal question. I really want you to tell me the truth. Let's just say, I know in 1992, the Braves organization was thinking about trying to get Barry Bonds, right? To rent
Hmm.
him, but then maybe possibly sign him for free agency, right? For 93. Now,
Yep.
Leland did not allow that, but here's my question. If Barry Bonds did sign with you guys in 92, let's say 93 free agency over Greg Maddux. You're not going to have Maddux. You got to give
Right.
up one guy.
Hmm.
Do you think you guys could have won more than one World Series if you had Bonds, but you did not have Greg Maddux? Now, my take, I think you would have because with the pitching staff in 91, 92, you guys went without Maddux to the World Series.
Hmm.
So now I'm thinking, okay, let's just say if Maddux wasn't on the team and Bonds was on the team, I wonder if they could have won more than one title.
I don't. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, selfishly, I would say no. I think Greg gave us as much of a chance to win as Barry did. I still think you look at some of those teams that did not win in that time frame, right? So I guess Greg came over in '93. That year we lost to the Phillies and the LCS, and I think that was a product of us being just flat out worn out from chasing down the Giants.
Uh-huh.
That whole month of September was essentially a playoff race. And I think we were just mentally spent by the time we got that far. 95, we ultimately win. 96 with the Yankees. I think if there's one World Series that I think we all look at and say, I don't like to say that we blew it, but did we let it get away? Yeah, that was that year. To go to New York and win two on the road and then come home, and then get swept from that point on. And we had the one game where we had the big lead and we had a fly ball down the right field line that kind of fell in between three guys, and then the Yankees capitalized on it, had a big inning, ended up winning that game. We had that one game where Paul, again, to the point where you make plays and you win sometimes, out of nowhere. Paul O'Neill makes a play in right center field on Louis Polonia late in the game when O'Neill had maybe half a hamstring that he was running on at that time, and he ran that ball down to the gap. It's like, oh my God, how did he make that play? So it's things like that that you look back and you're like, man, just that play right there changes everything, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I still feel like that was one we let get away. But aside from that, I don't know. I mean, again, 98 we got beat, and I don't know that we pitched all that well in that series. So I don't know. I mean,
Well, 98, you
it's
guys
an
went to
interesting question.
yeah, in 98 you guys went to game 6 against the Padres. But here's my question. Let's look at the positive side. The 1995 World Series. After your amazing game, like you literally 8 innings, 8 strikeouts, 1 hitter, you won. You mentioned you had a great bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever times that you had a shitty bullpen and you're like, oh man, I hope this doesn't transform on the pitcher's man, right? I mean,
All
we
the
all
time.
say that, right? You're like, oh man, you're like, oh God. Has it ever happened that you had a shitty bullpen, but then you were great on the pitcher?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
it happened both ways, and that's why I didn't pay a ton of attention to my bullpens,
but
so
it
to
could play
speak.
with your head, right, Tom? It
Oh,
could play with your
100%.
head.
I can't tell you. There are times where I would have a bullpen and I'd walk out of there thinking, man, I'm going to throw a shutout today, and I get killed,
Right.
And conversely, there were other times where I would come out of the bullpen and it'd be like, I'm walking from the bullpen. That walk until I get to the white lines to cross back into the dugout, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what I got to figure something out. By the time I get in that dugout and do whatever I got to do and get back on the mound, something has to click, because what I had right there in the bullpen, that ain't going to get it done. And then I'll go out and throw a shutout.
Right.
So it's just, you never know. And I think for me, that was more a product of my first inning problems, right? I mean, had some first inning problems over the course of my career, and I knew it. Everybody knew it. So I think for me, when I had that bullpen, and I knew I had a good warm up, but in my mind, because of those scenarios, I left the bullpen. I went into the dugout and I was like, okay, yeah, that was a really good bullpen. Now let's go out there and see if you brought it with you. And when I went through that first inning, like boom, 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 when I was walking off the field, I was like, okay, you did. You brought it with you. Now let's go. So, I just, like I said, it's one of those things I was aware of when they were good and I was aware of when they were bad, but I had enough experience both ways to not really put too much emphasis on it. Just try to take the good ones and build on it, and the bad ones, try to figure something out during my warm-ups.
Now, Tom, here's my big question that I always ask to my World Series players that won the championship. After winning the World Series that night, you're pouring champagne on each other. You're going crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you party afterwards? Where did you
Oh,
guys go? You can tell
it
me
was
that. Come on
no,
now.
I can't. It's not that we didn't. I can't remember the name of the place because it was
Oh,
25 years ago. But no, I'll look at it. You're surprisingly in the locker room for a really long time.
mm-hmm.
Because your families come in, and all that. So you have all that going on, and that takes a while, and then eventually everybody's out, and it's just the players, and then you're kind of in there and you're reminiscing about what just happened. I think for us it was a culmination of relief, given we had been so close. Now we ultimately finally did it, and all the emotions that go along with that. A lot of guys on that team had played together for a while, so we had history. So that, that takes some time, and then yeah, you get out of there and you make your way towards, at least in my case, me and Maddux and a couple other guys lived in the same part of town, so we made our way towards home, and had a little bar out there by the house that, now you want to talk about one night where we probably didn't pay for anything. That was probably that night. So it
Wait a minute, wait a
was
minute.
it
Wait,
was
Tom, you're saying a little bar?
well, yeah, it was like a little hole in the wall because by the time you get home, it's late, so you got to find those places that stay open a little bit later. So I mean, honest, by the time we got back out that way, it's probably 1 o'clock in the morning. So you're kind of slim pickings at that point in time.
So what time did you get home? 7 a.m.?
Oh man, it was like probably five or six in the morning.
You're
So
like,
yeah, it
oh
was
man,
it was a late night.
I can't be partying
Yeah,
this much, right?
exactly. But I had all winter to recover, so it was good.
Oh, okay. So it was, but was it the whole team or was it just you, Smoltz, and
No, it's just a few of us. It was like me, Maddox, and I think maybe Blauser and a couple other guys that lived out that way. Yeah, so it was small, but it was fun.
okay, so now we go to 96. Obviously, in spring training, you guys are like, hey, one go, win it again. We got the same team. Most of the guys are back, right? That was your number one mission is to win it. You guys destroyed the Yankees the first game, right? You guys are crushing them. The second game, Smoltzy. No, sorry, who started? Maddux. Maddux started.
Yeah.
It's like 9 ground balls to him. He's just killing the Yankees, right? So now you hop on a plane. You guys are feeling good. You're like, okay, this is our title, right? We just need 2 more games. That's it.
Hmm.
Did Bobby Cox ever say anything? Hey, don't get your hopes high. Just like take it easy, even though we're up 2-0.
No, he didn't have to. We knew it. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think we were maybe, I mean, at least sometimes I think people criticize us for, we were very matter of fact, very business-like. Like we were our attitude was generally, we're not going to say anything to do anything to piss the other team off. We're just going to show up, win 2 out of 3, and get out of town. And
Right.
that's kind of how we went about our business. And so in a scenario like that, you're aware that you just took 2 on the road, but you still have a lot of work to do. But obviously we felt good about it coming home. And I remember I flew home early because I was pitching game 3, so I flew home early and I was following the game on my phone and stuff like that. And it was in that those 2 games in New York. That was Andrew Jones's coming out party. It was like this
Yeah.
19-year-old kid that was hitting home runs, and everybody's like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
Put on a
So
clinic
it
in
was,
Yankee Stadium.
yeah, exactly. So I'm seeing what's going on the plane, and I'm like, "Oh man, okay, great." And then again, to what we keep talking about, right? You start going over the games and you dissect what happened. We lost game 3, 3-2, and it was me and David Cohn. And I remember we had a bases loaded, nobody out situation in that game, like late, like in the 6th inning or something like that. We didn't score, and you lose 3-2. Now the next game, yeah, we had the big lead, and then the pop fly that falls in. The Yankees have a big inning, we lose. And then it just
The baseball
snowballs.
gods. It's the baseball gods.
Yeah, I mean, it just,
Yeah.
there
But Tom,
there are
here's
some
how.
things.
Okay, so you started game 3, right? Now, give me the breakdown. What time you show up at the park the day in the World Series when you pitch, right? And 2, does Mazzoni and whoever your catcher is, and you go over the hitters, like you guys have a little meeting because Advanced Scouts gives you the report, right, of how you're going to
Yeah,
pitch to these guys.
yeah. So back in those days, yeah, you do a team meeting,
Mm-hmm.
go over the scouting report, what have you, and then on your day, yeah, you individualize your game plan. So, I don't know. You get there, World Series games start later, so if you're starting at 8:30, typically for a 7:30 game, you're at the ballpark at 4:30. So for an 8:30 start, it's probably around the same time, just because it's the anxiousness and the nervousness of wanting to get out there and get to the ballpark and do all that stuff. And then well, I don't want to be in 5 o'clock traffic. I'd rather be in 3 o'clock traffic. So all that stuff factors in.
Right.
But you're there 3.5, 4 hours before the game, and I think for me, the first part of it is just kind of mulling around, getting ready to go out for batting practice. Probably at some point before I go outside, I sit down with Javi, um, or whoever's catching, and we go over our game plan, which obviously for me was not all that complicated. You knew what I was going to try and do, but there obviously are certain guys where, okay, well, try not to let this guy beat me, or if this guy's, I think I can get this guy out this way, but if I'm going to hold on to that for the first at bat or the second at bat, that if he comes up later in the game and the game's on the line, then we'll break this out and try to get him out this way. I'm not going to try and get him out like this if I think I can in the first inning with 2 outs and nobody on base. I don't want to show him that, right? So
Right.
there's some of that stuff that goes on, but for the most part, it's who like I didn't pay a ton of attention to, oh, this guy hits this pitch good or this guy hits that pitch good, because a lot of times it doesn't match up with what you do, right? I want to know, okay, is he ultra aggressive on strike one? Is he a guy that once you get strike one, will he chase strike two, strike three? Like, so, okay, I'll throw you strike one, but I can get strike two and strike three without throwing you another strike. You're going to expand the zone. You're going to chase stuff like that. That's the stuff I want to know. If the guy's in running, guy comes up with runners in scoring position and he's typically patient. Is he ultra aggressive now because he's got a guy in scoring position? I didn't care so much about, oh, he hits this pitch good or he hits that pitch good or he doesn't. My foundation was what it was, and I was going to try and do what I tried to do and make that work. But there is, like I said, those games within the game that, okay, there might be a guy that I know takes a first pitch strike 99% of the time. Okay, here comes a little four seam fastball in the outside corner, for strike one. Now, if that some other guy comes up and it's like, well, he's going to be ultra aggressive, you might get my 2-strike changeup right off the bat. You're going to get my chase changeup, or if I throw you a first pitch fastball, it's going to be on the black or off the plate. I'm not throwing you a strike on the first pitch. If you want to chase, great. But no, so those are the things that I wanted to know or try to incorporate. But then, yeah, you just kind of go outside, take batting practice, do your thing. And then, believe it or not, I would, because there's so much time built into playoff games. There's more time in between batting practice ending and the game starting.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, I'd go on the couch in the TV room and lay down and take a nap, because you're still like for me, because there's kind of that nervous energy, right? You're amped up, you're ready to go, but you know how it is. Sometimes you get nervous about something, you kind of get a little tired or whatever. So I just, lay down for 5 or 10 minutes and kind of take that quick little cat nap and knock the dust off, and then all right, let's go. It's time to get ready.
It's crazy as you being a former big leaguer. It's like you get nervous, you're so anxious, but then once you get on the mound, you feel fine, right?
Oh, 100%. Because
Right?
people
It's
ask me
always
that
like
all
that.
the time, right? It's like it was always leading up to it. Once I'm out there's nothing I can do. I'm in it, so you got to do
Right.
it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like people will ask all the time, oh, would you rather be out there in a big game, pitching or on the bench? I'm like, I hate being on the bench. I have no control over what's going on. At least when you're on the mound, good or bad, you're in control and you know what's happening and you have a say in the outcome. When you have no say, it's like similar to watching your kids play. I would way rather be on the mound in a just a completely intense situation than to sit in the stands watching my kids play, because I can't help them.
And you know what? When you got to the World Series in '96, here's the thing. Ron Gant really well. He was your teammate. The guy hits 2 home runs off you in the Cardinals series, even though you beat them. But it's like,
Yeah.
Tom knows this guy really well. How do you hit a home run off him?
Ronnie was not a good match for me. He because he was really good in with fastballs, so I was really ultra careful about going in there against him. So when I went in there, it was more, I think he knew it was for a purpose. It was to push him off the plate. I wasn't going in there for a strike. And then he was good with balls up out over the plate. So if I hung a sinker or I hung a changeup, that was danger zone. So I think he was. I was a good matchup for him for some reason.
So the toughest hitter, was it Barry Bonds, lefty wise?
I would say Tony Gwynn. At least. To me, what made guys ultra tough was those guys that don't get themselves out, right? And look, as good a hitter as Barry was, there were times where he'd get a little bit anxious, and you could get him to kind of chase some stuff and maybe get himself out. Tony didn't do that very much, if at all. He was the kind of guy that, what made him so difficult was he was going to stay in an at bat. If you got him to 2 strikes and you made a good pitch, he's going to foul it off. and he's going to keep fouling them off and keep making you make good pitches. And the more he makes you do that, the more the odds are swinging in his favor that you're going to make a mistake. And that's what he was so good at. It's like, again, people always ask, well, would you rather have a big bopper up there or a guy that hits line drives? And to me, it's give me the big bopper, because those guys are trying to hit home runs. They're going to expand their strike zone. They'll swing at some pitches out of the zone. Those guys that tend to stay gap to gap stay a little bit more in the zone. They don't tend to chase as many pitches. And if I get guys that won't chase, makes it a little bit tougher on me, right?
Yeah.
So those are the guys that I had a tougher time with.
Wow, the game is all about adjusting, and that's the key, right, Tom? It's not just getting to the big leagues; it's staying there. But the only way you're going to stay, you're going to have to adjust, right?
You have to. I mean, look, it's the age old thing in baseball, right? You got to stay ahead of the curve. It's and especially now, right? And it started. It was there when I played. I mean, but even more so now. Um, you're the things you do don't stay secret for very long. The book gets out on you pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And once guys have a book on you or have an idea what you're trying to do, okay, well now you've got to start to make some adjustments, right? And I think the mistake a lot of guys make with their adjustments is they try to make wholesale adjustments, right? Instead of subtle little adjustments. Like for me, if I tried to make adjustments on guys, it wasn't like I was creating a new pitch or something like that. It's just I'm going to change my sequence a little bit from time to time. There were times, certainly for me during the course of my career where, I always had that fastball changeup combination, but there'd be some years where my curveball was really good, some years where it sucked, some years where my slider was a better pitch, and those were things you had to figure out midstream, and why you might, and I was guilty of this sometimes too, where my slider or my curveball might suck, and I'm spending way more time in the bullpen trying to get that pitch going, and then all of a sudden I get out on the mound. Well, now I've lost my fastball and my changeup because I spent so much time trying to do something else. So it's that balance that you're always searching for, right? But I think those are things that you learn over time. And look, even for me, again, like we talked about, when I got to the big leagues, it was an East and West strike zone. Later in my career, when my last year with Atlanta, when I went to the Mets, and they started with that whole Quest Tech thing and the new strike zone, it became more of a North and South strike zone. I had to learn how to pitch all over again. I had to learn how to pitch inside. I never did that in my career. And I'll never forget, at that time, Rick Peterson was our pitching coach in New York. And, he was really good about having candid conversations with you. And he might tell you some things you didn't want to hear. But I remember having a conversation with him, and he's like, listen, you got to be a guy that goes inside now 50 or 60% of the time. And I looked at him like you had three heads. I'm like, you're crazy. I can't pitch inside that much. And he said, I'm telling you, you not only do you need to do it, you can do it. And he was right, and that's how I kind of got my strike zone back, so to speak. Not the East and West one, but how I learned to pitch within the North and the South and expand the zone up and down. It's like I've always said, you got 17 inches on the plate, right? It's how are you going to garner those 17 inches? And for me, it was always away and sprinkled in. Now that away is not there anymore. Well, you better get some of those inches back on the inside part of the plate. And I had to learn how to do that. And it wasn't so much that I had to learn how to do it. I could do it. It's just I didn't trust myself doing it. Not that much.
Well, you didn't feel comfortable. You didn't feel comfortable.
No, it was out of my element, and,
Right.
and listen, and to some extent I was stubborn, right? I'm 18 years into my career. I'm 37 years old, and it's like, why the hell do I have to change what I've been doing? Well, guess what? If you if you want to stay here, you better change it, because that's the way it is. So, I think once I got over that stubbornness a little bit and was a little bit more open-minded about it, then I got way better at it. But, my point is, there's always phases where you have to change. Sometimes it's the rules within the game that make you change. Sometimes it's the hitters in the game. Sometimes it's you physically. I couldn't do the things at 39 and 40 years old that I did when I was 25 and 26. It's like that old, I don't know who wrote that country song, but it's not as good as I once was, but I can be as good once as I ever was. That's kind of what it becomes, right? I might not be able to go out there and dot up my changeup 9 out of 10 times, but if I can do it 6 out of 10, I got to make those other four a little bit more in my favor, right? So that's you got to pitch in more so that you give yourself more room for a mistake on a changeup, or uh, change your sequence a little bit so that now when you go back to that pitch, that guy's not getting such a good look at it. So there's all kinds of variables that make you adjust, but it's the guys that are willing and able to do it that are the guys that are successful and stay in the game for a long time.
When it comes to golf and you and the boys, right? You guys gamble every hole? I mean, were you guys talking smack? What was
Yes,
the
all of
biggest
it.
bet? What was the biggest bet?
I don't know. We'd get every now and then would get stupid. I say stupid, but you're playing for $1,000 a hole and $500 trash or something like
$1,000 a
that. But
hole?
it's not the whole round. It's usually if somebody's getting beat and they start to press the bet, you might play that way for the last three holes. We're not doing that for 18 holes. Look, I was never a big fan of that, because ultimately, you're trying to go out there and have fun, and get away from baseball. And when you start, having some of those bets and you don't win, now you're coming away from the golf course that's supposed to be relaxing and you're pissed off. Or, you're playing for $1,000 a hole, and Smoltz hits a ball in the woods and it's on a route, and you're saying, you know what, dude, too bad. I don't care if you break your wrist. This is $1,000 a hole. Hit that ball. So it got to the point where it's like, why are we doing this? If you're on a route, I want you to move the ball because I don't want you to get hurt for the baseball team. I'm not trying to win a bet. So it got
So
a little wacky sometimes.
who was the most shit talker out of you three on the golf course?
John on the golf course, because he could back it up. He was by far back then the best player. So he could back up his trash talk and all that. But the Smoltz was, Smoltz in another life, would be a great golf concierge because he set up the greatest trips. And it was essentially, when you went on the road, again, people ask you all the time, you pack your golf clubs when you go on the road. Pack my golf clubs. This is the first thing I pack. Then I pack my clothes. I make sure I have my golf clubs first. All right. But it would be on the plane, having a couple beers, playing cards, whatever, and you'd feel the wheels go down for approach and be like, Smoltzy, where are we playing tomorrow? What time do we need to be in the lobby? And it'd be like, boom, 6:30 in the lobby. We're going to Pine Valley. We'll have a car there waiting for us. Let's go. It was unbelievable.
So Smoltz was your spokesperson. He was the guy.
Oh man, he was the guy. He was the guy, and it was great because back then, obviously, it was golf isn't as popular as it is now post COVID, and you could get on courses easier, and you could offer guys at the course tickets to come to the game if they'd let you come out and play, and you could do all that stuff. So it was a good situation for everybody, but it was a blast. We enjoyed it, but more than anything, it got us out of the hotel room and it got us away from baseball for just a little while, which I think we all would tell you prolonged our careers.
But I'm sure it was so easy for Smoltz to make a phone call to a country club and say, "Hey, this is John Smoltz. I'm bringing Tom Glavine and I'm bringing Greg Maddux. So, buddy, it's on the house.
Yeah.
Come on
Well,
in."
I can tell you, yeah, after 1991, it was a lot easier. I can tell you that. So for sure.
Okay, so it was much easier then.
Yeah.
Any of your favorite courses throughout the country that you guys are like, "Oh, I can't wait till we hit the road trip to this city"?
Yeah, it's funny because over time, cities that you didn't necessarily love early on, once you got to know the golf routine, were really good. Like Philadelphia, great golf trip. Pine Valley, Marion. I used to not love going to New York, but then get out of the city and start playing some of those golf courses out on Long Island. Pretty damn good. Pittsburgh, you go to Oakmont. You go out to San Francisco, you're playing Olympic Club or San Francisco Golf Club. Or if you had an off day, you drive down to Pebble. So it was great. It got to the point where virtually every city we went to, there was at least one golf course that you look forward to playing. So it was pretty good.
But Tom, how does it work? When three of you guys, it's always the three of you guys, or it'll be sometimes, you got to pitch that day, and then Smoltz and Maddux will go out. Is that how?
Yeah, pitching usually got in the way of golf. So whoever was pitching that night wasn't playing. And that was the beauty of it for most of those years. Those 5-man rotations we had, pretty much everybody played golf. So there was usually always a foursome, or if you went to a golf course where you had to play with a member and you can only bring three guys, then that was the case too. But in those days, we didn't. we didn't have a hard time filling out our foursomes, because you'd have some position players that would play a little bit too, right? I know some guys are, I don't play during the season, but there'd be other guys that they didn't mind playing once in a while, so you'd fill some of those guys in here and there.
Has Bobby Cox ever pulled a Hal McRae move to reporters inside his office?
By that you mean just go off on somebody?
Yeah, just go off on somebody. Was he like that?
I'm sure he has.
He did. I'm sure he got ejected numerous times. But have you ever seen him and say, "Oh my God, this guy's flipping"?
I mean, I've not witnessed it per se. I've heard it. I mean, I've heard times where he'd have reporters in his room, in his office, and you can't see in there, but you can hear what's going on, and he'd be wearing somebody out or some question that they asked or whatever. But I mean, look, Bobby was fiery, right? I mean, that was what made him great. That's what made everybody love playing for him. He just had such a passion for everything, and defended his players tooth and nail. And we all respected him for that. But he was fair. He was. Every manager will tell you, "Hey, my door's open. Anytime you got a problem, come in. You just better be careful what you're asking him, because he's going to let you know it." I remember one time,
even if it hurts, right? He'll tell you.
Oh no, I remember one time. I guess it was like the late '80s, and I won't mention who the guy was, but we were on a trip back from California. It's a long trip. You have a couple drinks on the plane. This one particular guy wasn't happy about how he was being used in the bullpen. And, of course, we egged him on. We're like, yeah, you should definitely go in and ask Bobby, when we land and get back at 6:30 in the morning after a West Coast flight. You should definitely go in and talk to him. That'd be a good time. And sure enough, he did, and went in and asked Bobby what his role was in the bullpen. And, I'll save the words, but essentially Bobby said, what's your job? Here's your job. When I call down and ask you to get the F up, you get the F up. That's your job. And it was like, oh, okay. So
he was a hard-nosed. He was a hard-nosed manager, but he would take care of you guys. He was a player's coach. He was, right?
Listen, he didn't have a lot of rules, but you better follow them, right? And it was essentially, you show up on time, you wear your uniform the right way, and you play the game hard. And if you didn't do it, he was going to let you know it. I mean, plenty of guys that didn't run to first base when they came to the dugout, they got aired out. Andrew Jones, he pulled him off the field in the middle of the game for not going after a fly ball. Things like that. So, I mean, he treated you like men, and he gave you enough rope to hang yourself. But when you hung yourself, you were going to know about it. But again, to the point, he fought tooth and nail for everything that he could get for us on the baseball field. He fought tooth and nail for every call behind home plate, every call on the bases. That was, if he thought he could gain an advantage somewhere down the road in a game, then that's what he was trying to do. And at the same time, it was, and I don't think this mattered to him, but that was all part of why, again, guys wanted to play for him and played so hard for him, is because we saw it. We saw how hard he fought for every inch of every advantage he could get for us, and how much he defended us, and that made everybody want to play for him.
A guy like Deion Sanders, that incident with Tim McCarver, you think that was wrong or right?
That was probably a little too far.
I know. You know what I felt like? He splashed him because let's squash it. You know what I mean? You're in the clubhouse, right? You're in the clubhouse. You're pouring champagne. And it's like, you know what? Let's squash it. And I guess Tim McCarver didn't take it that way.
No. I mean, look, I see both sides of it. Could it have been handled a little bit better? Sure. Was the perception that it was meant to be a little bit more than it was from Deion? Yeah, probably. But I think it was just one of those things. Like, look, Deion was a great teammate. But I think you see it now with him coaching still, right? When you kind of cross him a little bit or say something he doesn't like, he doesn't like it, right? And I think that was one of those instances. Right now, I don't know what Deion would tell you if you asked him now, would he do that again? I don't know, but it's unfortunate, because I think that's one of those bad things that happened, so to speak, that I think people remember that probably isn't fair to Deion and the teammate that he was.
Yeah, but was Deion the type of guy who'd be like, hey, Tom, I'm going out. You hanging out with me tonight or what? Let's go.
No, Dion was very opposite of that. I mean, he was, really religious guy, and you didn't see much of him out anywhere. He was pretty quiet,
Oh,
kind of
okay.
stuck to himself. And look, I think that to your point, where you start to get good and you get popular, and you go out, and people recognize you. I mean, that was tenfold for Dion. So it wasn't like he was going to escape getting out somewhere because too many people knew who he was.
Now, Hall of Fame, all right? You got the phone call. Usually you guys get the phone call in January. You knew you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. Come on, man. 305 wins. I mean, that's guaranteed. That is guaranteed, right? But how did you prepare your speech? What did you do? What did you say to yourself? Like, okay, who's going to help me out with this?
Yeah. As far as the going in, I mean, yeah, I mean, I would have been the first 300 game winner, I guess, not to go in, right? But I, again, just my nature, I didn't take it for granted. I didn't, did I think it was going to happen? Yes. Did I think it was going to happen on the first ballot? Probably, but not sure. You never know, right? So I just kind of tried to prepare for it and be ready one way or the other. And when I ultimately got the phone call, it was phenomenal. And then, yeah, you have a nice little whirlwind tour, and then reality sinks in, and you're like, all right, I got to give a speech, and I got to thank so many people over 25 years of a baseball career and do it in 5 or 6 minutes. So it's stressful. And I didn't let anybody read it. I let my agent read it. I had him look at it. I didn't let my wife read it. I didn't let her look at it. I didn't let anybody, because anybody that I was going to be talking about, I didn't want them reading it. I wanted them to hear it the first time I said it. And,
Right.
I think it was the kind of thing that you do it kind of in phases, right? I'd be, you know, more than a few nights where I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it and like make a mental note. Okay, yeah, that I like that. I gotta put that somewhere. I gotta get that person in somewhere. Or, I'd be on a flight going somewhere and I'd jot down some ideas and whatever. And then over time, you kind of write it a little bit. It has the body of a speech, and then you tweak it a little bit. You add this, you take away that. But I think inevitably you try to first and foremost thank the people that are important to you that had played such a hand in getting you there. Obviously, family and wife and kids and all that stuff, and coaches that had an impact, doctors that had an impact, things like that. So, it's not easy. I can tell you that. I mean, no guy's going to tell you it's easy because, like I said, you're trying to encapsulate a long career and a lot of people that helped you along the way in a short period of time, and inevitably you're going to miss something or somebody, but you can't worry about that.
Right. Yeah. Now, how does the Hall of Fame schedule work? You guys do your speech around on a Saturday, right? That's Saturday in
Sunday's
Cooperstown?
induction day.
Okay,
Yeah,
Sunday's
Sunday.
induction. When do you arrive? What day?
When you're going in, you get in earlier, because you got a lot of stuff you got to do, and you want to kind of get the lay of the land. You kind of want to get situated a little bit. But I would say typically, on a typical year, guys are probably coming in Thursday afternoon. A lot of us will get together and go to dinner Thursday night. Friday's usually a golf day.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have there's a welcoming party Friday night that pretty much everybody goes to, and then Saturday they have a charity tournament. Most of the guys play in. They have a lot of autograph signing things around Cooperstown that weekend, so guys are spread out different places signing autographs and doing stuff like that. Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon is the parade. Where we go to parade down Main Street, and then they've added the last couple of years. They do the non-baseball inductees like the Ford Frick Award and the other one I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but they'll do that on Saturday, and then have the parade, and then Saturday night is usually the guys that are going in. Their teams are having parties for them, so guys will go to different parties and depending on who's coming in and if they know them and that kind of thing, and then Sunday morning's induction day, and then the fun part is Sunday after induction, it's the members only dinner. So that's when all the guys get in the room and have dinner, and there is a lot of shit talking going on at
I
that
love
dinner, but it's a
I
lot of
love
fun.
the shit talking. I love the shit talking. Those are the best,
It's
right?
fun. Yeah. No,
I
it's
mean,
fun. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Tom.
look, I mean, even the
Yeah,
year I went in, right? I mean, well,
yeah.
second year I went in, the year I went in and, obviously gravitated to Maddux and Frank Thomas, and we all sat at the same table. And then the next year, I went back and I sat down and I look up and it's Nolan Ryan, Fergie Jenkins, Bob Gibson, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I don't know if I should be sitting at this table, but they were all the persona they all had on the baseball field. Maybe that's the way it was back then, but they've the edge has come off a little bit over the years, so they were all super nice and had a great time.
And you know what's crazy? I want to turn back the clock a little bit. I felt like it was like a soprano thing. Bobby Cox's Tony Soprano saying, "Hey, I don't care. Get Dale Murphy. He's the guy you're gonna hit."
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm saying to myself, "Hold on a minute. This is the guy that took you under his wing,
yeah,
right? He took you under his
yep,
wing, and you're like, out of all the guys, you want me to hit him? I
yeah,
mean, come on now, right?" But the crazy
yeah.
thing is when I watched that, because I went to the conservatory acting school. That's what I do, and it's like, okay, I see your body language. You don't want to hit him, man. You're on the
No,
mound. Your body's like, man, this guy's a great guy, man. I can't hit him, and
yeah.
you didn't really throw that hard. You were like, let me
No,
throw
I
it
didn't. I
soft.
mean, yeah, I mean that was hard. It was a tough situation. Looking back on it, I didn't handle it well. I should have hit him and just been done with it. And I tried to on the first pitch, and when I missed him, then it was, when I threw the first one at him, he looked at me like, okay. And then subsequent pitches after that, he was barely in the batter's box by the time I let go of the pitch. So, I was almost chasing him out of the batter's box trying to hit him with a pitch, but it was tough. I mean, we had a brawl the weekend before with Philly, and we went to Philly the following weekend, and we expected something to happen on Friday night, and it never did. And then nothing happened on Saturday, and so it's over in our mind. Well, Roger McDowell, who subsequently becomes my pitching coach years later, first pitch, hits Otis. Otis charged the mound back in Atlanta, and Wally Ritchie was on the mound, and so they didn't like it. So they hit Otis like in the eighth inning, and sure enough, I see Bobby walking down towards me, and I'm like, ah. So he sits down. He's like, "You got to hit Murph," or he says, "You got to hit the first guy." And I said, "Bobby, it's Murph." I said, "Let me hit the second guy." He's like, "No, you got to hit Murph. You got to hit him." And I was like, "Okay." So obviously, like I said, I tried to and I didn't, and it was. And like I said, in hindsight, I wish I handled it a little bit better. But it was funny. Years later, I'm back with the Braves, and Roger's our pitching coach, and the clubhouse guy pulls it up on YouTube, and he's showing it. And we're all laughing about it. And I said to Roger, I said, "Roger, what the hell?" I said, "It was Sunday." I said, "We expected something Friday." And he said, "Well," he said, "I know," but he said, I made the kid a promise." He said, if nobody got him by the time I got in the game, I would get him. And he said, "I didn't get in the game till Sunday." So he said, "That was my promise. I kept my promise." I said, "Okay, well, fair enough." So
Well,
and I said,
Tom,
"You realize you're the only guy that's ever gotten me thrown out of a game." So that was nice.
Tom, if I was your manager or coach, I'd be like, just hit him in the butt. It won't hurt.
Yeah. Well, I
Just hit him in
tried.
the
I
butt.
tried to hit him easy with the first one, but I missed. And then it was like I said, he kept moving mid windup every pitch after that, and it was like, all right,
And you know
whatever.
what?
So
And you felt upset, like you knew you got ejected, but the way you were walking, you're like, yeah, I get it. I didn't want to do this. You know what I mean? I didn't want to.
no, I mean, I felt bad because A, I didn't get him, and then
Right.
B, it was Murph, and you'd be surprised, for the next year or so, how many letters of fan mail I would get from people that, "Who the hell are you to throw it down, Murphy? Who do you think you are?" And I mean, like people just ripping me a new one, and I'm like, I didn't even hit him. So,
I didn't even
imagine
hit
if
him
I
exactly.
imagine if I hit him, yeah. But
But Tom,
yeah, it
you
was.
actually read the fan mail? Like you guys were actually reading that?
In those days, I did, yeah. And then it gets to
Yeah.
a point where it just gets too much of it, and it's hard to keep up with it. But yeah,
Any any
occasionally you would.
any crazy fan mail? Like,
No,
hey,
there was some crazy stuff from time to time. I mean, people looking for money or people ripping you over something
wait,
or,
wait, wait, wait. What do
whatever
you
the
mean
case.
looking
Yeah.
for money? What? You better
Oh,
pay
yeah.
me?
Hey, can you donate to this or can you send me
Oh,
money for
okay.
that or can you whatever, and it's like, it was always kind of a good rain delay, like boredom thing. Like, like, all right, I'm tired of eating. I'm tired of watching TV. Now let me go look at some fan mail, see if there's anything interesting in there. So inevitably, you get
Wow.
some that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. So,
But Tom, you're still a handsome guy. Were there any females
huh.
back then? Like, hey, Tom,
Well,
please marry me. Please go out
you'd
with
get
me.
you'd get some of those. You'd get those crazy ones. I'm not gonna lie and say that you didn't, but no, that's not where I'm looking to. Wasn't looking to meet my wife through fan mail. I can promise you that.
Well, yeah, of course, I know that, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So now, after you retired, right? You're like, okay, enough's enough, right? Your arm hurts now. You never had surgery, right?
Not till I got done. Yeah.
Oh, so you had surgery when you were done.
Actually, I did. I take that back. I had surgery, and so I played in 2008 in Atlanta, and I had elbow surgery. I tore my flexor tendon, and then tried to come back in '09 and didn't end up coming back. So then a year or so after I got done pitching, I had my rotator cuff fixed. Yeah.
Who did it? Dr. James Andrews?
No, I had a guy, actually a guy in Atlanta, his name's Dr. Ansari. He's an orthopedic that I would go see for other things, and got to have a relationship over the years. So, I was done playing. I was like, listen, I just need this thing to stop hurting all the time. So he did it. And, one of those things I didn't really want to do, but, our team doctor at the time, who was, no longer operating, is like, listen, you need to get it fixed. And I'm just going to tell you now, the sooner the better, because the longer you wait, the worse your rehab's going to be, the harder your rehab's going to be, and you don't want that. So I gave it about a year and then went and had it done, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, right. You feel good now, right? You don't have to like,
Yeah, nothing
oh,
hurts.
this
I can
hurts,
play
right?
catch. I can play catch with my kids. I can throw batting practice to the teams that I coach, and and it doesn't hurt. But more importantly, when I roll over in bed at night, it doesn't wake me up. So
That's
that was
true.
worth it in and of itself.
Tom, when you were done, you did you audition to become a broadcaster? Or they're like, no, Tom, you're in. We got you.
No, yeah, it's kind of like you're in. When I got
Okay.
done, they wanted to bring me back into the fold, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was interested in some front office stuff. So they said, let's do kind of a hybrid thing. You come back, and at that first year, I did all Sunday home games in Atlanta, and then I did some front office stuff, and then it became, well, you did pretty good at that Sunday thing. Let's do some more games. So I did some more games, got a little bit more involved on the front office stuff, going to see minor league teams and whatnot. And then it just got to the point where I was like, you know what, I can't do both of these. And coming off of a 20 plus year career where you're traveling all the time and you're gone from home, like I didn't have the heart to do that to my wife again. I'm like, hey, honey, I'm done. I'm retired. I'm going to do some more traveling. So, I thought, hey, the easiest thing here to do is just do the broadcast thing. So it's worked out well. I enjoy it. Keeps me around it. It's not rocket science by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fun. I enjoy being around the game, being around the guys, and kind of gives me something to do.
Tom, when you're in the booth, do you also like study the pitchers now? Do you study their mechanics? Will you tell Frank Core right next to you or whoever's next to you broadcasting? We'd be like, oh no, his arm release, he's not throwing strikes. That's the reason why. That like, do you notice that?
I mean, I do with the Braves guys because I
Yeah,
see them,
that's what I
right?
mean
I
with the
don't,
Braves.
yeah, with the opposing teams, unless it's something that's like really obvious, I kind of try to stay away from that because who knows? It could be something that he does naturally, or something that a guy is working on and you don't know because you don't cover that team. So I kind of try to keep it to the Braves, but I don't do it a ton, right? Because I
Right.
don't, I think there's a fine line between being honest with the fan base and just being critical of guys to be critical, and I think I always remind myself when I'm doing a game that the game was not that easy, and it looks easy from the booth, and it looks slow from the booth. And I can tell you there have been so many times where I'm in the booth and I'm watching a guy pitch and I'm thinking, all right, you just threw three sliders in a row, please throw another one because he's not going to hit it. And when you're on the mound and you're going through that, you're inevitably saying to yourself, I can't possibly throw him another one because he's seen three in a row. So, I mean, you just see things so differently up there. And it's, sometimes it's way more obvious than what you went through on the field. So I try to remind myself of that. Now, having said that, there are times where you have to point things out, right? And I'm not saying that getting on somebody's mechanics is being critical, but I think it helps the person at home understand that, like I say all the time, when you're struggling, inevitably there's somebody who's saying, "Oh, just throw strikes," and I'm thinking to myself, "Yeah, I hadn't thought about that one." I'm really out here trying to throw balls.
Right.
And it seems easy to the fans at home or at the ballpark, but I can promise you that guy on the field is fighting his ass off trying to figure something out and trying to find something. He doesn't want to stink. He's trying to do well. So when it's not going well, I think you can kind of point out that, hey, well, that front side's flying a little bit, or his tempo's a little bit quick, or whatever, and just point out to the person at home, well, here's kind of why maybe this isn't going the way he wants, and trust me, he's trying to fix it. But
But as
I've
a
always felt like
colorist,
you,
yeah, as a
yeah.
colorist, Tom, you have to justify what happened, right? I mean,
No, I think you do. You
they
do.
tell you in your ear, "Hey, Tom, break down his pitcher mechanics. This is the reason why his slide is biting. This is the reason why the hitters are fishing or chasing." Right? You got to break that down a
Yeah,
little
no,
bit.
absolutely you do. I mean, I think that you look. We broadcast for the Braves, so we're homers, right? But at the same time, you have to be able to be at least you have to be honest with the fans at home, right? Everything's not roses. So when guys are struggling or guys make mistakes, you have to point out what went wrong. And I've always felt like you can do that without getting personal, right? Guys, again, game's not that easy. Made plenty of mistakes. I didn't try to make any of them. It just happens. Things happen on the field, whether you make a bad decision or you make a bad pitch or so. Okay, so what led to that? Okay, well, here's what he was trying to do, and okay, well, maybe here's why this went wrong, or here maybe this is why he made that mistake, or with a pitcher, yeah, he's trying to throw that ball, but you see how that front side goes a little bit, arm drags, can't get there, so I mean, you can point some of those things out, and like I said, you can do it in an honest way without just burying a guy, right? But
Right.
I think you have to do that, right? And I think for me, I try to stay away from a lot of the statistical stuff. I leave that to the play-by-play guy. I just kind of, I do a fair amount of research. I want to understand, kind of similar when I pitch. Who's swinging the bat well? Who's throwing the ball well? Who's not? Why? Are the numbers telling you the truth? Or are they not? So at least you have an idea. Because the last thing you want to say, oh, so and so is on the mound and he's really been throwing the ball well, and then you look at the stats and go, oh my God, no, he hasn't. So you don't want to make that mistake. But I think that for the most part, I kind of try to stay away from a lot of that stuff and just react to what's going on the field, and try to make people at home that are watching the game understand, like I said, okay, what's the guy trying to do? Did he do it? And here's why, or did he not? And maybe this is what led to that poor decision, or that throwing error, or whatever the case may be.
But there's times, do you regret of you might not say something like, "Oh my God, I should have said that. That was a great point of view in my head, and I didn't say it."
There are times, sure, and I think for the most part you can kind of check it and go back to it. I think that's for me where the experience part of it comes in. Is learning how to do that, learning how to not to talk over the action. If you have something to say, try to get it in before the pitch. If you don't, let the pitch happen and pick your point back up after the pitch is made if there's nothing going on. So, I mean, I think those are all little nuances that you learn how to do. But, I try to approach it conversationally. I try to approach it, like I said, the person at home that's watching the game is maybe watching baseball for the first time. Not everybody understands what's going on, or intricacies or nuances or the rules or what have you. And, it's your job to make them understand.
Has it ever happened a player comes up to you like, "Yo, Tom, why'd you say this about me?"
No, not yet.
No.
And I think, probably by design, I have not been overly critical of anybody. I think like I said, my criticism is generally to what the play was and maybe why it went wrong. Maybe why, like I said, why did you make that poor decision and throw to the wrong base? Well, you know what? Because there's a lot going on the field sometimes, and our brains get going a little too fast, and sometimes we make bad decisions. It happens.
Just being human, man.
Yeah.
So then your son got drafted, right? Your son?
He, He
Isn't
signed.
that?
Well, he didn't get drafted. He signed as a free agent
Oh,
with the
okay.
Nationals. Yeah, so he had a good first minor league season. Did really well, and then last year or this past year, he struggled in spring training with his arm and went to Delaware to high A ball. First game he pitched, something wasn't right, and so they sent him back to rehab. And he just had surgery about 8 weeks ago to clean up his shoulder. So you know, praying that the cleanup is going to be something that gets him over the hump. I mean, he pitched well. He just his recoveries were never good, which like I kept telling him, dude, for a reliever, you can't pitch and then not pitch for 4 days. That's not going to fly. So you got to figure out what's going on, and if you got to get it fixed, bite the bullet and get it fixed. So he did. So I just hope that he
And
has a good recovery, and we can find out.
and what's the odds of him being a lefty too, man?
I know, I know. He
Wow.
does funny. He does everything right-handed except throw. He throws left-handed. Everything else he does right-handed. So it's the weirdest thing. But
So he's like a
um,
Ricky Henderson if he was a position player. He'll,
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. So yeah, I mean, look, I think who knows what's going to happen, right? I mean, I know how hard it is to get there, obviously, and I know he does too. But I just pray that he's able to get healthy and get back out there. And if he's not good enough to make it, then I think we can all deal with that. But if he's never healthy enough to find out, I think that'll be the harder bridge to cross, so to speak. So I just pray that he's good recovery and he can be healthy and figure out try to make it happen.
yeah, I text Brett Boone. I'm tight with him, and I'm like, "Hey, Brett, give me the report about Glavine." What? He's like, "The nastiest lefty changeup ever," and I'm like,
Well,
"Really?"
yeah,
And
I
then
was lucky.
and then I said, "What?" And then he said, "Righty wise, it was Hoffman. Hoffman was the
Yeah,
nastiest."
Trevor was
Uh,
nasty. Yeah,
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 and then
and you don't see too many. You don't see too many closers that make a living off a changeup.
right,
Because I mean,
exactly.
typically you don't. You're not in there long enough to establish your fastball to make that changeup so effective. But he did it, and it
And
was it
then
was it was damn good.
and his son plays with your son, right? They played together a little bit.
They might have. I know they played against each other. I think in college. I'm not sure where Trevor's son is now, but I know
No,
he was.
Brett,
I
Brett,
forget.
Brett. We're talking about Brett
Oh,
Boone's
okay,
son.
Brett's son. I don't know. I
Because
don't know
his
if they
son
played
signed with the
together.
Nationals, and
He may have. I don't know. Like
yeah,
I said, I don't like. I'm so bad when it comes to that kind of stuff. Because I'll talk to my son. I'll be like, "Well, who's that?" He's like, "Dad, he's been on my team for a year." You talk about it. I'm like, "Oh, okay, sorry."
but
I'm
now
terrible when it comes to that stuff.
in Auburn, wasn't Hudson his pitching coach?
He was, yeah, and he loved Huddy, and Huddy loved him, and he learned a lot from Tim. So it was good. I mean, his freshman and sophomore year weren't great, but then Huddy came in, and he pitched a lot his junior and senior year. So he learned a lot from Huddy.
Now, do you get offended if your son says, "Dad, I'm really learning a lot from Tim Hudson"?
No, because
No.
he did that to me when he was in high school. And listen, I've had those conversations with coaches. I've had that conversation with Leo. I had that conversation with Bobby. It's like you ever get frustrated? You got to tell somebody something 100 times. It's like no, if they tell him 100 times and he doesn't get it, then I got to tell him 101. That's my job is to have him get it. And it might be that I tell somebody something one way and somebody else tells them the same thing a different way, and it clicks. And I remember he did that to me. We were working on something with his changeup in high school, and he came home from practice one day and he was all excited. He's like, "Dad, I got the greatest tip from my pitching coach today." I was like, "Oh, okay, what was it?" And he told me what it was, and it's essentially everything we had been talking about and working on, but because this guy said it a little bit different, it clicked. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a great tip. If that works for you, go with it. Have at it." I wasn't be like, "Dude, that's what I've been telling you for 6 months." I mean, you want to, but in my mind, it's like wherever you get it, you get it. And it's not always going to be from me. It could be from anybody. Like I tell him again. You go back to being your parent, right? I tell him all the time the same thing my dad told me. I'm like, "Listen, my dad told me. He's like, listen, you're going to go off and you're going to play ball, and you're going to have a lot of people that are going to tell you what to do, and most of them mean well." But you have to figure out what works for you. That's your job. And I bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And I tell my son that, and I tell other guys that in pro ball because ultimately it's your career. And if somebody's trying to give you advice on something, it's up to you to figure out whether or not that helps you. And then if you feel like it doesn't help you, you can't just say, "I'm not doing that." You have to be able to say why you're not doing it. You have to be able to explain your position because if you can do that, then a coach is going to be much more likely to listen to you and give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you just say, I'm not doing that, then that's a problem. And, coaches don't like that. So, I mean, like I said, I don't care where he gets it from. I know he gets a lot from me, obviously, but if somebody else says something to him a little bit different and is essentially the same thing and it clicks, that's fine. As long as it helps, I don't care.
Well, it, you're so right about that. It's that click. It's like, I get it now,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, when I played college baseball down in Florida, it was a small school, Palm Beach Atlantic University. I was at Bucky Dent's baseball school working the wintertime, and Paul O'Neill was a guest, and I was entering my sophomore season. And I said, hey, Paul, what's the key hitting against lefties? He says, oh, just treat them like righties. Just keep that shoulder in longer. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right there, he just told me that. And all of a sudden, I'm working off a tee, and then boom, it just clicked. And then, my bread and butter pitch was middle away. I don't care. I'm going to hit
Yeah.
the opposite field. I don't care. You throw me outside, I'm going to kill you. But if you throw me inside, I'm going to kill you too. That's just a reaction
Yeah.
to me. But I figured out, look away, react in. That was my
Mm-hmm.
hitting thing. Because
Yeah.
90% of the pitches, first of all, in the big leagues, is outside. Even in college,
Yeah.
it's outside.
Yeah. Look, there's not many, there's very few guys that can pitch in effectively, and it's even less in today's game. It's all stuff in today's game, right? It's not so much sequencing and moving the ball in and out. Guys don't pitch in a ton anymore. Veteran guys do, guys that know what they're doing, but younger guys, they try to,
Yeah,
but they don't.
the younger guys, I feel like, well, I throw 98, I'm just going to try to blow my fastball right by. Well,
Sure.
a great hitter is going to hit that in the big leagues.
No, they're going to hit it. Yeah, and then where you see guys, you see some guys get frustrated hitters because they're getting hit and things like that, and it's like, well, I get your frustration, but at the same time, that guy has to pitch inside. He's got to pitch inside. Now he doesn't know how to do it, and
Right.
and most of us didn't know how to do it when we were younger, myself included. But you have to, and that's just the essence of, again, back to the strike zone. Whatever the strike zone is, you've gotta earn your portion of the plate on the outside part and the inside part of the plate. Because if you let a hitter eliminate one, you're doing half of his job for you, and that's never a situation you want to be in.
Tom, that commercial, chicks dig the long ball, right? How many days did that take for you guys to shoot? Was it one full day?
It was 2 days, and it was a road trip to Philly and Miami. We did the first portion, or the portions of it, where the batting practice, the Rocky stuff like that. I don't know if you can see it, but the picture you guys have up now, that's at Veterans Stadium in Philly. And then we went to Miami and we did a lot of the skeet shooting stuff, where we were swinging at the skeet shooting, where we were doing the sauna scene and the workout scene. That was all in Florida. And, after we got done, I think both Greg and I were like, what the hell are they doing with this? Like, where is this going? Like, we had no idea where it was going, we obviously kind of knew the ending with Heather and, chicks dig the long ball and all that stuff, but I don't think we really understood how they were piecing it together. And I remember I walked in, I knew it was coming out, and I didn't know exactly when, but I walked into the clubhouse in Atlanta, into the food room, TV room, and boom, there it is. It's coming on. Now I'm stuck. I'm in the room, everybody's there, and I'm just thinking to myself, oh my God, I hope this is good. Because if it's not, I'm going to wear it right here in front of everybody. And, when it played, I kind of didn't react a ton. I smirked a little bit, and then the guys were all laughing, and I was like, okay, that was pretty good, and I breathed a sigh of relief and I walked out. So it was all good.
Tom, if that commercial shoot, right? Did they offer you a lot of money? They were like, "Hey, Tom, please do it." Did you decline at first?
No, no, it was the kind of thing where it wasn't a ton, but it was one of those things where, I remember my agent and I had been talking, about trying to do something, and would I want to do something for Nike? And I was like, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you, right? I mean, everybody's looking to, endorsements and things of that nature. And I was a Nike guy at the time. So, when he came to me with that idea, and with Greg in it, I was like, yeah, all right, if Greg will do it, I'll do it. And I think Greg was like, yeah, if Glav will do it, I'll do it. So, we did it. And it was, like I said, it turned out to be pretty good.
You
All right,
know,
listen, I got like 5 more minutes. I got an
all right,
appointment.
you
I got
got it. You got it. Okay, so listen, I'm going to cut you off right now. I'm going to listen. You had a great career. One more question.
Thank you.
If there was a movie about Tom Glavine, which actor would you hire to play Tom Glavine?
I mean, like a young Robert Redford or Brad Pitt, of course, right? I
Oh
mean, my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah, definitely. I just, I'm sure Robert Redford could do it lefty, but Brad Pitt,
Yeah.
man, you got to adjust to
Yeah,
be
I
the
don't know.
lefty.
I mean, Robert Redford was pretty good in The Natural, so yeah, he could do it.
All right, well, listen. Thank you so much for being on my show. Seriously, I mean, it's a blessing. Seriously, I asked Danny Nagel. I was like, Danny, who can you get me, man? Give me a break.
Yeah.
So I get you Glav. I'm like, you have no shot. He's like, oh yeah, watch this. And I was like, what?
Now, my boy Denny, yeah, he's when he asks me for stuff, I'm usually pretty good with him. So I like Denny. So no, I enjoyed it. Listen, it's a good show. I love talking baseball. Obviously it's something that was near and dear to me and provided me a pretty good living. So I enjoy talking about it.
Oh, absolutely. Hold on a minute. I just need one